When God called Abraham and brought him into the land of Canaan, the key part that I think a lot of people miss is when Abraham sees the land before him, and even though he's older, he has every right to take the land that he desires and is better for himself. He had his nephew Lot, and he gave him the first choice. But I think that act of giving up what is your right is actually fundamentally what defines us as Christians. The language of the world is to take what's rightfully mine and take more. Whereas Christ and Christians are about giving and giving more. My career, I think, at Morgan Stanley after the moves was going quite well. I was doing quite well, performing well in my investments. I kept outperforming, taking on more responsibilities. There was a part of me when I was younger where I think I was kind of enamored with the worldly things. Like, I was chasing after the same things, bigger bonus and promotions. And it was one of the most important things that you need to get if you're at an investment bank or a large company like Morgan Stanley, is you need to get to managing director, the MD. That's the partner level. That's the ultimate goal in life, basically, when you're at these big organizations. And so I was up for promotion together with another colleague. So we were going to step up as the co-heads of Asia. And, the promotion was almost guaranteed in our minds. But our big boss came from New York, and he flew into Singapore. He sat us down and said, hey, I only have space for one promotion this year. You're going to have to, one of you are going to have to go first, and the other one will try to get next year. And so when he said that, what was really weird was that he said that, he can't decide. So why don't you guys talk it over and you guys decide? But when I went home and I spoke to my wife, we decided to pray together. And when we prayed, God kind of impressed upon us that this was a Genesis 13 moment, right? And he gave that Bible verse to my wife first, and we spoke together, and the Holy Spirit had brought us together in that view that this is an opportunity for us to express and show love in the Christ-like way in the workplace, being a servant leader and giving up our right. And so next day I went back to the office. I sat down with my colleague and I told him that, hey, these are the reasons. We have to build this company together. We have to trust each other. And if you really want it, I'm willing to let you go first. He jumped at it. He immediately said, oh, I really, really want this, Sam. Is that gonna be okay? Are you gonna be able to do that? I really want it. Next year, I'll support you, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, that didn't make it easier for me because I was still struggling, I say God convicted me, He gave us a verse, but that, giving that up was probably the most painful thing that I've done because I built a career around getting to that point. And so I told him that, yeah, you can take it. He said, throughout my life, I thought that I could do anything that others can do. But today I realize that there's something that you're doing that I just cannot get myself to do. And I was wondering why. And I realized that it was because you have your God and I don't. And I always talked about glorifying God, doing things for His glory, for His kingdom. But I really realized right there and then that throughout my life, well, pretty much everything that I'd done was for my own glory. When I finally gave up something, gave up my right, then God was glorified through the mouth of a non-believer. And so God was really gracious through His mouth to say those things. And that encouraged me to a point where I was okay. I mean, this title was not important to me anymore. And that encouraged me a lot. So it was a very foundational, seminal moment in my career that shaped me, I think, for a lot of the things that I ended up doing.
Well, in Asia, a lot of times you may not be referred to by your name. You're referred to by your title. And so your title is everything. It shows where you are in the pecking order. And so a person who's offered a top position, of course you take it. You may offer some type of humble resignation, like, oh, I really don't want it. But yeah, you'd go after it. So for someone like Sam to turn it down, I know how hard that must have been for him. And I know he says it wasn't easy, but through prayer, he turned it down. For him to do something like that is extraordinary.
I think the biggest thing is his willingness to give of himself, right? So whether it's time, resources, and I think that is rare in finance, people in the background, because it's really the mentality isn't to give, it's really to take things as much as possible. When we see other people putting others ahead of them, part of it is just a pure amazement. And then you say to yourself, like, oh, that's something I should be doing. That's something that I should be teaching my kids. Because as much as people talk about doing things, the most important, the most effective, the impactful is just through actions. You want to make sure that you are leading by example rather than just talking about it.
So I think after that event, really kind of pivoted my life towards how do I really show love in the place that God has placed me. And at Morgan Stanley, I think as an investor, what really gave me purpose and meaning was because we're an institutional investor, we were serving a lot of pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, and insurance companies and endowments and the like, but it was too far removed. And so I left Morgan Stanley. It was a long goodbye, but it was an amicable departure. And I started looking at the space of financial technology and how we can leverage technology to democratize and improve financial services.
So there's a wrong that we are trying to solve in the way financial services delivered. I think the most important thing is that we, as your fiduciary, as your financial advisor or your wealth manager, are serving you first, the client. Most of financial services in Asia, and actually most of the world, the distributor or the financial advisor is taking fees from both sides. They're taking fees from the client, and they're taking fees from product providers. This can obviously lead to horrible misalignment of incentives and has ended up, in our view, of an extremely underinvested Asian population that is now aging very quickly in a lot of the developed countries and hurtling towards old age poverty.
So we decided not to be paid by those guys through the behind route in the commission. So every commission that we receive, every single cent, we 100% give back to the client. So they keep whatever is deservedly theirs. And we charge the client a transparent fee that is a flat fee based on assets, which is the best way to align values. So we're trying to transform the industry to be more transparent, have a high level of integrity, go back to the basics of being a fiduciary, doing what's in the best interest of the client, and returning the service in financial service.
The power of it is that as an advisor, I can advise with a clear conscience. I could tell my clients that, that perhaps what we have at Endowus might not even be suitable for you, right? I'm at liberty to tell that to a client, right? And now in a traditional finance firm, that would never happen, right? Because if you do that, you're probably going to lose a client and the potential opportunity for revenue. But Endowus, all our advisors, they are not paid commissions. We are all salaried staff, so that gives us the liberty to give the best advice to our clients with no conflict of interest.
Endowus does, I think, to me, is a leveling the playing field, democratizing and access to financial instrument, and that is only in the past is preview to very wealthy individuals or institutions. And what Sam is trying to do is to bring that and break that barrier of that glass ceiling, and bring it to the mainstream. And so, for us, a lot of us, I think, are middle class and low class, that struggle with it once they're retirement age. All of a sudden, the retirement nest is not big enough to support them, right? Because we don't have the sophisticated access to those instruments that it was just never given to us.
And why is it that, maybe 30 years ago or even 10 years ago, the financial advice I get would be random based on the bank branch I happen to walk into and the ticket I happen to grab, and therefore the teller I happen to sit in front of. I think technology can deliver that expertise at scale in a far better and more consistent experience than ever before.
I think that a lot of governments and institutional and pension companies have a lot of guidance, but individuals don't have that. And so what we're trying to do is bring that institutional kind of frameworks of investing and managing wealth to the individual.
The world will be a better place if Endowus is successful, not only because of the clients we touch directly, but because we will have changed the way in which this industry functions. We will have changed this industry to be client-centric. The world will be a better place because people will invest better, they'll manage their money better, therefore be able to live easier today, knowing that they prepared for their future, and therefore live better.
Being a Christian is really about giving and radical giving. I think the concept of money is something that's close to my heart because I've been so close to it. And I struggled with it when I was younger as well. I thought that, tithing, that's what you need to do with your money, and then give to good causes or give to the church, and that's it. But as an investor, managing that pot of money, as an investor, I was a steward to that resource. And it was important because how that's invested actually impacts people, impacts society. I think that's been a passion for me to seek, justice and righteousness in the space of finance, because that's the space where I think the rubber meets the road, where this God and mammon fight is where it's most intense. And God has placed me here for that reason, I think.
There are times in our lives where God asks us to own it. We got to initiate, go after it feels like. But there's other times that we just have to release it and surrender. So it's an art. Again, it's all based upon listening to the Spirit of God, responding to that initiative. But I think a lot of times the moves of God in today's world is really countercultural, like with Sam. It's really not a step towards ascending. It's really declension. But if you look at really who Jesus is, that's what he was about. He said he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. He chose not to take the royal pathway to be the king of the land, but he chose to be the suffering servant. But I think many times that's the path of following Jesus, is a path of death, that has the promise of resurrection.